This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com.
Hi, I'm Helene Woods, and this is Let's Quilt, episode number 12. Today we're going to start binding our table runner. And to start off with, I'd like for you to make about a 1/8 of an inch seam right along the edge. And this helps stabilize the batting and the backing to the front of the table runner. Now we're going to trim our batting and our backing. So I suggest if you have a large square to go ahead and use it to make sure that we get all of our edges all even. If not, you can just use a ruler. And then we're going to trim this off. I'm going to trim the sides at the same time here. We're going to start binding our table runner, and we're going to use what is called a double fold binding technique. Now we're going to take our 2.5 inch wide strips that we've already cut. Have laid one down, right side up. I'm going to take the other one and I'm going to place that opposite directions, right sides together. And I'm going to take a ruler and I'm going to place it right where these two pieces intersect. Hold my ruler there, and then I'm going to draw a line. And I will pin it in two places. Now, as you're working in doing this, I suggest you always work to your right. You got these pinned, and then you can kind of fold it up, and you can see that you're getting the correct bias. So I'll sew those, and then we'll continue. We're going to be making one long strip, so I want to show you how you can connect another one to it. Here we've got, this is the first one we did. Now I've turned it over like that, and I'm going to lay my second piece there. Now you can see that the diagonals keep going in the same direction. And what I like to do is I'll just take my finger here and I'm turn this over and make sure that everything is going in the correct direction, and that's why it's best to work to one side. And we'll draw a line here too. And we'll pin it. I'm going to continue adding on. I think you'll have 4 or 5 strips that you're going to have to put together. Now we can sew. We're going to start sewing now. Remember, we're going to sew on the diagonal. I suggest you use just your regular ecru thread, the color you can use in your bobbin, and what you're going to sew on the top with. Now I'm using a black thread so it shows up better so you guys can see it. So. All right, we have our diagonals sewn here, and I'm going to take my ruler and I'm just going to lay it in about the 1/4 inch mark. On these rulers, you'll notice they do have a 1/4 inch mark. Lay it on there, take my rotary cutter, cut that off. Now you can see we've got these two little tails too. And I just line the rotary cutter up like this, take that off, move it over here, and cut that one off. Okay, we're ready now, and I'm going to show you how this has turned out. I have it all left out there. Now, as you look, you can see when you do things on the bias, it lies much smoother, and you don't have a definite pattern. So we've got one there, and here's the second one. Now we're going to press these out. Take your 1/4 inch seams, and I want you to open them up, and then we're going to press those open. We're going to do that one, and we'll do the next one. Finger press them a little bit to make them lie flat, and then you can bring your iron down. Then next we're going to fold them in half, wrong sides together, and we'll press those. Now after you've pressed your binding in half, I'm going to have you open up one end and just take an inch and fold it back, and then go ahead and repress that. Now when we start putting on our binding, we're going to start at the short end, and we're going to start in the center. So I would take that piece that you've just fixed, and I would place it on the center mark, and then I'm going to have you pin it. I'm going to take it down, and as we get within 1/4 inch from the edge of the table runner, I would like for you to just make a dot. You just take your ruler, measure in, and make a dot right there. So when we stitch, we stop at that dot and we back stitch. When you start your stitching, measure in about 2 inches. You don't start stitching at the end that we just turned. Start here, and that way we have room to work when we bring around the binding all the way around. So we'll do that, and then I will stitch, and I'll show you how to turn this corner. I'm going to start stitching now, and remember, we don't start at the end. Come in about 2 inches. Again, 1/4 inch seams. And I'm hoping you're using your walking foot, because that makes it go much easier. I'm going to sew down to the end of this piece, and then I'll show you what we're going to do. Now we're getting to the little dot that I made. I'm going to take my pin out of there, and I'm going to sew down to the dot, and then I'm going to back stitch to hold it there. Back stitch about 3 stitches, and then take it off. Now at that time we're going to release your quilt, and we're going to turn it. And we're going to start down the other side, and I'll show you how to miter an edge. All right, I'm going to sew now, and we're going to make a miter. What you do, you take a little piece here, and we just bring that up at an angle. And then we take the binding itself, bring it up and down. If you hold your finger there, you can see how we can make it come up even with the raw edges up here. When we sew, we're going to start right here at the top of that and bring our stitching line right down. Now we're going to sew this seam, and I suggest that you do back stitch a couple of stitches along when you first start this one also to hold it there, and then come on down and sew the rest of it. I'd like to show you how the corner is going to look after we have stitched it. I'm just going to open this up and lay this out. You see it makes a nice edge We're going to turn that to the back side and stitch it by hand. And we've got all our binding sewn on, and I'm going to show you how you can turn the binding to the back side and make a nice corner here on all four corners. Now here again, if there's a little bit of extra fabric here, I have no problem with just taking and snipping off a little tiny bit of it. Now we're going to bring that and push the fabric into that mitered corner that you have there. I'm going to start over here a little bit ways. Now here are my little hairpin. I think girls use them for bobby pins or something like that. I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll use those. Put those on. Now as you get to the corner here, again we're going to do some mitering. I'm going to have you bring one side down, just like you would here, and then I'm going to have you bring the other side in. And as you can see, that makes a nice little miter right there in that corner. And you can put your clip there, and that should hold it. Now this has to be sewn by hand, and I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to use a darker thread again so you can see what I'm sewing. And I'm just going to come around this corner. I just use a whip stitch. It's very fast and it holds the binding very well. Okay, so I'm ready to make a stitch close to the corner here. I'm going to put my needle in, bring it through. I've got one more to go. Now to help you keep this miter in place, what I do is I take my needle and I just take it up in behind the binding, bring it up in the center there of your miter, and then just take it back down through, just the same way that you came up, and that way you've got a nice stitch holding it in that miter. There. And then you can continue on with your whip stitching. And you might take one more down here at the edge. There. Now remember, as you're going along, to cover your seam here. You don't want that to show, so you can bring your binding edge right up to that seam line, and then you just carry on. I'd like to show you how nice the backing looks now that we've got our binding on, and stitching it by hand. It takes a little bit longer, but it's well worth it. It makes a very nice finished seam for your table runner. In our next episode, we're going to be making a label for our table runner. Until next time.